What's going on YouTube? This is Rybo at the bench, and today I have another head-to-head review for you guys. And so this is going to be looking at the Civivi Baklash versus the Ruike P108. I believe I have that right. There's a Ruike 801. This is, I believe, the 108. I will correct that in the title if I'm wrong about that. I don't know why they have two knives with basically transposed numbers, but whatever. Reason I'm doing a head-to-head on these is that they are fairly similar knives. So you have two flippers, roughly the same size. The Ruike's going to be a little bit longer blade length. We'll show that, mostly due to the fact that it does not have the finger choil here. But other than that, you know, fairly similar, I guess, purposes for these kind of larger EDC blades. So I thought maybe they'd be a good candidate for a review. So some real quick baseline measurements. So you're looking at 3.1, 3.2, somewhere in there for sharpened blade length. And you're looking at about 3.6-ish on the Ruike. I think I'm pronouncing Ruike right. I know I pronounced it Ruike or something. It's the weirdest spelling knife name that I know of, so apologies if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. And then in the pocket and thickness, so the thickness on the Civivi feels a lot thicker, but I don't think it's actually that much different. So 1/2 inch there, and yeah, that's a little bit, so 0.45 inches, so definitely thinner on the Ruike. And then let's do a kind of in the pocket length. On the Ruike, you have to measure to the end of this little, I don't know what you call it, this backspacer protrusion weird thingy. This is hard to get a measurement of. All right, so we're gonna say 4.7 inches. And then on the Baklash, you're looking at, I'm gonna say less than that, yeah, 4.58. We'll do some quick weight checks. You have a knife here with full metal liners. I think they are hollowed out to some degree. So 4.0 ounces. And then on this knife, this is a frame lock and it's all steel. So 4.1 ounces. So actually just about the same. So you can really see where, I think I mentioned this in the review before, but the full metal liners do add a decent bit of heft to this guy, which otherwise could be a fairly lightweight knife given the handle, you know, and whatnot. So, all right, so let's do a review of kind of what we're looking at. So pocket clip scales, overall size, considering the height, weight, the width, etc. How does it carry? Ergonomics, action detent, blade, steel, lock system, and the intangibles, which is just subjectively which one do I want to reach for. All right, and we'll be using our little coins or whatever you want to call these things. So number one, let me close these up and we will look at the pocket clips. So both of these have very interesting pocket clips. I commend both of these knives for having very good pocket clips, very different between the two, but you have a deep carry clip on this, you have a deep carry clip on this, although deep carry clip on this is a little bit deceptive because as you can see you have this mountain thingy that's coming out of here, which is just really dumb, but the clip itself is very nice. You have some interference there with those screws. Haven't seen a ton of issues with that. You have something a little bit similar here with those two screws. You have a nice steep clip here. This one falls in the pocket very nicely. This one's just a little bit different. So you have this, I don't know what you want to call this like triangle cone thingy here. I've never really seen that before on a knife before, but I like it. It gives you the kind of heft of what you want on a pocket clip, while also allowing only a very small contact point, which is oftentimes the issue with you know, certain pocket clips, is that you have just too many points of contact, and if you can kind of spread that out, and I think that's why the Spyderco wire clip does this so well. Whereas this one, you know, you have one contact point that's fairly small, but there you go. So these are fairly similar. You know, I don't know that I would give a huge advantage to either one. Definitely aesthetically, I like this one. This is just kind of weird. I don't love the bluing, the kind of fake bluing. You can see that it's already chipping off there. I'm not a huge fan of that on knives. I guess I will say in practice that I don't know. I've kind of liked this a little bit more. I'm going to give a very, very, very slight advantage because I think both of them work very well. I just think this one carries the knife a little bit better. This one carries it very deep in the pocket, which, you know, it's a fairly large knife, and that's cool. This one, I don't know, there's a satisfying snap out of the pocket when you pull that out. I think it's very interesting that they could do something different. So I'm going to give it a slight advantage there, but they're pretty equal. All right, scales. So you have G10, I believe, here, and you have all metal knife right here. You know, this one's going to be an easy one for me. I like the look of all steel knives and steel frame locks, but practically speaking, there's no grip. You know, it's a cold day today. It's just very slippery. I don't really feel like I have a good handle on the knife. It just, you know, keeps slipping out. Some of the faceting here is nice, and I think that actually does improve the kind of gripability of the knife to some degree. But at the end of the day, it's a steel frame lock. And here you have, while it's not super aggressive G10, you do have G10 with some nice kind of contouring on the handle. You know, I think visually it looks very nice. I really like G10. You know, it's not that aggressive, but it does give you a good hold on the knife. So scale win goes to the Baklash. Overall size. This is an interesting one because you can see, you know, from our baseline that these are very similar knives. The Baklash is a little bit bulkier. It's a little bit wider. It's a little bit thicker, but it's got a smaller blade. But you're giving, you know, you're kind of giving up some of that blade, and you're getting something that's maybe a little bit more ergonomic. This guy is very thin. It has a much thinner blade, you know, but you're giving up, you don't have that finger choil, which I don't know that you really need it on this knife because you have such a long handle there, but that's kind of what you're giving up. In terms of like, how do these carry? They both carry fairly well, but this one absolutely carries much better. It's so thin, and the geometry is so nice that when you're carrying this guy in the pocket, it starts out very thin, just kind of gradually slopes downward. You never hit this because it's just such a small flipper tab. It's kind of angled away, so your hand isn't going to hit it. This thing just, you know, it slides all the way down in the pocket, but it does hide away on the side of the pocket, which is, you know, really, really nice. This guy, you know, this is not really going to hide anywhere. It does carry very well and efficiently for the size that it is. But I think at the end of the day, you get a bigger blade on this guy, you get a full handle, you get, you know, a very nice carry, very thin and kind of out of the way. And, you know, my view of that may be changed if this guy was a lot heavier, but at the end of the day, they're both the same weight. So, you know, I'm fine carrying that weight if I'm going to get all of that in the pocket as compared to the Baklash here. All right, ergonomics. So both are totally fine. You know, the Baklash, you get that forward finger choil, you get some more contouring on the handle. Let me see. You have a little hot spot on the pocket clip there, which, you know, it makes sense. It's a little bit bigger. A very comfortable knife. This one, you know, also very comfortable. I think your hand does fall into the right place here. Yeah, I don't think that you really need a forward finger choil. I think that this one right here works absolutely fine. It's not uncomfortable there. You don't have any issues with that jimping right there. And I don't really think there's any hot spot on the handle there at all. You know, honestly, I don't really even feel the pocket clip there, whereas I definitely feel it on the Civivi. And I think I even have mentioned before, but my hand tends to push down on that as I'm deploying the knife, which gives me one of those on the finger. I don't really get that on this one. My hand still kind of gravitates towards that area, but for whatever reason, I know it looks like it does, but it just doesn't hurt the hand quite as much. However, this one, I think just because it's a little bit thicker, because it has that finger choil and that contouring, and it's the G10, I think that's honestly one of the bigger things for ergonomics is the G10. For whatever reason, this one feels a little bit better in the hand. This one does not feel bad at all, totally fine, but I'm going to go with the Baklash. All right, action detent. So here's a very interesting one, and both of these knives are going to be very, very close. So I have been very, 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 very impressed with the action on this knife. I mean, this is buttery smooth on the open and the close. And granted, oh, look at that. I failed to deploy. Man, this knife has been very reliable. I've had no issues with that until right this minute. But I did put some frog lube on this one. I mean, I put frog lube on both of these, and it definitely improved the action. But the action was very nice when I got it. I've been very impressed with that. The action on this one is also just, you know, incredibly reliable, very, very smooth. I mentioned before it does sound a little bit cheaper. This one definitely feels like a more expensive knife when it comes to the action, but this one just absolutely flies open. Which one's more satisfying? Honestly, they're both probably about the same. I'm going to give a very, very slight advantage to the rake here, and that is really just for the kind of I don't know, what do you want to call it? The luxury factor. You know, if I'm opening both of these knives, this one feels more expensive. I enjoy opening this more, although this one is very reliable. It flies open. That's very nice. So no issues with either one, but a slight advantage just because this one feels a little bit cheaper than this one, and that makes sense because you have a liner lock versus a frame lock. So there you go. All right, the blade. So another very interesting one. So the rake has a thinner blade. It has more of a flat grind than the hollow grind on the Baklash here. You know, rake has a bigger blade. The Baklash has this nice swedge here. Baklash has a nice finger choil. Both of these slice very, very well. And so it's kind of hard to give an advantage to either one of these. I like the, you know, aesthetically, I like this blade a little bit more than this. It just kind of tapers too far in for me. I would like a little bit of a bigger belly towards the end of this blade. You know, this one's kind of the spear point. You know, that's nice. It looks cool. I think for everyday carry, I'd probably tend towards the rake's blade geometry. While they're both good slicers, I like the more flat grind that you get on the rake here than the hollow grind here. Although functionally, I don't think it really matters because they've both performed just fine. So yeah, it's hard to really tell. I don't know. Yeah, that one's very close, but I'll go with the rake. All right, steel. This one's fairly subjective, I think. You have, what is this, 14C, I always get this messed up, 14C28N. I believe the Kershaw Skyline has that same steel. And then this one you have 9CR18 MOV. Can I get that on there? Yeah, there you go, 9CR18 MOV. Both fine steels. I think this has a slight advantage objectively, so there you go. Lock system. So both of these are no, I'm sorry, frame lock, liner lock. I don't know what I'm thinking. And this one, so objectively, I think most people are going to give the advantage to the steel frame lock, and I agree. Objectively, I think it's probably a stronger lock. Especially when you compare, add in the lock here that you have to prevent that from becoming disengaged. Totally agree. You know, I think objectively this does have the better lock system. However, you know, while the metal and the liners here do feel a bit cheap, there's been no blade play, and I'm actually going to give the advantage to the Civivi here for one reason, and that is this is, you know, and this is the issue I have with a lot of frame locks. This can become an issue to disengage because you have those two pieces of big, you know, thick metal, and they stick. And so right now that's working just fine, but it's such a thick piece of metal that when you push to disengage, it does tend to be difficult to get it all the way out of the way to clear space for the blade to come back. And so I often find myself pushing really hard against that, kind of leaving some, you know, marks in my fingers. And so just from a usability standpoint, while I do think it's a stronger lock system, and I don't think that you can really argue with that, I do tend to have issues disengaging the lock, and for me that makes it a less enjoyable daily carry. On the Baklash, it is super easy to disengage. I have no issues. It is a much thinner piece of metal, so that makes sense, you know, also making it probably weaker. But I think it's just more enjoyable to use on a daily basis for that reason. All right, and I've apparently run out of these little sticker medallion things. I've lost one around here somewhere, but that's okay. So I'm on the final intangibles category. We have 3 to 5 over here, so it doesn't really matter which one I vote for. And intangibles is kind of hard. I've had this knife for a little bit longer. This one's fairly new. First impressions, this is going to win the intangibles category for me, really for the carryability and the kind of not expense factor, what did I call it earlier, the luxury factor, the fact that it feels like a more expensive knife, although, you know, that lock system does really kind of make me angry. It kind of hurts my finger as I disengage. But you know, there are a few things on this knife that I don't love. I'll talk about that more in my detailed review. But I think this one has just gotten in the pocket way more than I thought it would. I did not like the looks of this knife when I first got it. I think it's a little bit funky. I don't like this, et cetera, et cetera. But over time using it, I mean, it feels awesome. It cuts very well. It's super comfortable. I don't love steel frame locks. I don't love all steel knives. I've mentioned that many times before. However, the Baklash is an amazing knife. I really like it, but I think because it is a little bit bigger, you know, thicker, and it's, you know, a pretty large blade, I just don't find it in my pocket quite as much, whereas I can get away carrying the larger rake because it just does hide so well in the pocket. So I like both of these knives a lot. I think if I had to do one intangibles factor right now, I'd probably go to the rake, which won this head-to-head anyway. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.